From Detroit's University District, we're recording on Thursday, February 21st, 2019. I'm Jer Stays, and this is your Daily Detroit. We have 3 stories for you today. Projects in Detroit's neighborhoods are getting a boost from Chase Bank. Constitutional law professor Robert Sedler talks to Sven about the lawsuit Michigan has joined, targeting President Trump's national emergency declaration over the Mexican border wall. And Shianne speaks with women's empowerment champion Laura Khalil about her upcoming vocal self-defense workshop. The event will be on Wednesday, February 27th at the SheHive in Ferndale. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Efforts to redevelop some Detroit neighborhoods are getting another boost thanks to a $15 million commitment from JPMorgan Chase. The money will be rolled out in 2 parts through the city's Strategic Neighborhood Fund and will mostly go to projects in commercial corridors around the city. Chase will make $10 million available in long-term low-cost loans, with $5 million committed as philanthropy. The Strategic Neighborhood Fund supports projects in Detroit's neighborhoods that can't access traditional financing. The idea is to build affordable housing and make infrastructure and other improvements to retail corridors in the city's neighborhoods. According to Invest Detroit and the bank, various programs run by Chase have helped create more than 800 housing units, nearly 300,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, and created or saved more than 500 jobs since 2014. Of note, Peter Schur at Chase Bank says that there have been no defaults on the loans in the program. He adds the successful track record has changed how the bank invests in other cities. The announcement was held at the Detroit School of Digital Technology on Verner, just behind Michigan Central Station. The school was in danger of losing the space they use for training in a former police precinct, but they've purchased the structure with part of this money and will continue to offer job training classes. Michigan has joined 15 other states in suing President Donald Trump. The lawsuit targets his decision to declare a national emergency to fund construction of his long-promised wall along the U.S. Mexico border. The lawsuit alleges that the declaration unconstitutionally redirects money that Congress had already allocated for other purposes. Congress included around $1.3 billion for border security, far short of the $5.7 billion the president had requested. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democrat, called the president's move a fake emergency and, quote, publicity stunt that will raid our federal funding and cost us millions, unquote. So to help make sense of all of this, Sven spoke with Robert Sedler, a constitutional law professor at Wayne State University, for some clues about what may lay ahead for the lawsuit.
Professor Sedler, the Trump administration, the president himself have been arguing that there's plenty of precedent for other presidents, who have made national emergency declarations like this one. Is he right about that?
Well, there have been a number of national emergency declarations pursuant to statutes that have authorized it. But to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, this is the only one that purports to transfer funds from one program to another.
Meaning like funds that were already allocated for other uses.
Correct. The problem with that, of course, is that it goes counter to Congress's power to make appropriations, especially here where Congress refused to make an appropriation for the border wall.
Right. The lawsuit from the 16 state attorneys general alleges unlawful and unconstitutional. This was an unlawful and unconstitutional move. What exactly will the courts be wrestling with when it's weighing these?
Okay, the first question is whether the courts have jurisdiction because the plaintiff has what is called standing. The jurisdiction of the federal courts is limited to cases and controversies, which means 2 parties with adverse legal interests. A citizen can't just go into court and say the president violated the Constitution. Neither can a member of Congress. The party who brings the suit has to demonstrate that the party has been injured. So let's assume that California is the lead plaintiff. California has to show that this proposed border wall will cause some injury to the state of California. I think perhaps of a city like El Paso, which is on the path of the border wall, but which has frequent movement between Mexico and El Paso. Question is, would the path of the border wall cause some injury to El Paso? So the first question that the court will decide is, does the plaintiff have standing? The Department of Justice lawyers in all these cases will move to dismiss for lack of standing.
Does that mean Michigan, which is one of the states, could be, I guess, removed for lack of a legal term from the lawsuit?
Well, usually where you have a number of plaintiffs, the court decides if one of them has standing. And if one of them has standing, the court has jurisdiction. So it's not likely to say this plaintiff has standing, this plaintiff doesn't. The plaintiffs with the strongest cases of showing injury are the ones that will say, we have standing. Michigan is far from the border. California is on the border. So California, I think, of the plaintiffs in this suit, is the state that is most likely to claim standing.
Okay. And then if they clear that hurdle, then what will the court be wrestling with exactly?
Well, then again, it is a question of interpreting the terms of the particular statute, like the military construction statute. There's no constitutional concept of a national emergency. I mean, for example, in the wake of the horrific events of 9/11, the president couldn't declare a national emergency and assert certain powers. In our system, the president and Congress must deal with the national emergency, whatever you want to call it, with the powers that the Constitution gives them. But here we have statutes that that enable the president to invoke a national emergency and therefore take certain actions that are authorized by the statute. For example, on military construction, the president, by declaring a national emergency, can move funds from a construction project that the president says is not necessary to the national defense to another project that the president says is necessary. Now, the question is, how much discretion will the court give the president? How much will the court defer to presidential judgment? The government lawyers will argue there should be an awful lot of discretion to presidential judgment, whereas the lawyers for the plaintiff will say this involves moving around money that Congress has appropriated, and that there should be careful scrutiny, one, of whether there is a national emergency, and two, in this case, whether the funds are being moved from a project not necessary to the national defense to another project that is necessary to the national defense. And the question will be, how much discretion will the court give to the presidential determinations?
If I'm interpreting you right, the court is not going to make any kind of effort to judge whether this situation is worthy of national emergency declaration. Is that right?
Well, again, the court is interpreting the statute. And the question is, how much scrutiny will the court give to the president's determination that there is a national emergency and that the funds from which he's moving funds are not necessary to the national defense and the wall is necessary to the national defense? And all this speculation, well, this is constitutional, this is unconstitutional, is just that. It's pure speculation. So all that I can do, I think all anybody can do properly, is to outline the parameters of the issues that the courts will deal with.
President Trump himself said during his Rose Garden news conference the other day that he didn't have to make the declaration of a national emergency, but he said he did it because he wanted to get the money faster. Was that a mistake? Is that something that's going to come back to haunt him?
Let's put it this way. You can be assured that the plaintiffs challenging this will quote the president's words saying the president himself said there's not a national emergency.
All right. Well, it'd be really interesting to watch how this unfolds. Professor Robert Sedler is a professor of constitutional law at Wayne State University. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Okay. It's always a pleasure. Bye.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Milo Digital. Milo Digital is a full-service digital marketing agency that engineers quality results through data and innovative strategies. Learn more at milodetroit.com.
I'm on the phone with our friend Laura Khalil. She is the woman behind Force of Badassery, and she is going to be doing a really interesting workshop next week on verbal self-defense for women at SheHive in Ferndale. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you, Shianne. It's so great to be here.
How are you doing?
I am good. I am all fired up, actually, about giving this workshop. You know, in this post-Me Too world, I think that we've done an incredible job of shedding some of the light on the injustices, the sexism, and the harassment that so many women have gone through. And when I came up with this verbal defense workshop, what I really wanted to do was help arm women with really simple but powerful tools to be able to respond in those moments when, for example, we might be catcalled, mansplained, talked over, had credit taken for our ideas. And, you know, typically we freeze when that happens. We don't know what to do. We get really nervous and we sort of go internal and just try to get out of the situation. And one thing we can do is learn how to break that freeze response and respond in ways that are really helping us to reclaim our power and are done in ways that are not fighting with fire against that person. They're really non-combative ways that are derived primarily, believe it or not, from martial arts and hostage negotiation.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And I mean, obviously, I am a woman, and I know that we are taught from an early age that we need to be nice and we need to make other people feel comfortable. And it's part of these gender norms that have gone on for decades and decades. And so it's really refreshing to see that people are being able to step out and to learn how to actually speak up for ourselves and to do it in a way that doesn't make people feel like we are kind of going after them, using those soft skills that we do know how to use. That's really refreshing. And I'm really excited for this workshop. So you've kind of gone back and talked about how you created it and why you created it. Can you tell me about who this workshop would be good for?
So this workshop is great for any woman who wants to learn how to improve her relationships with people in the office, or frankly, with men in general. The tools that you'll learn in this workshop, which you can start to implement that very day, they're that easy, but they're very powerful. They can be used in situations where, let's say you get catcalled a lot on the street. You'll learn the tools and the responses to help disarm those situations. In more serious situations, you'll learn how to respond when you're in a boardroom in front of a bunch of guys trying to present your project, trying to get credit for it, or push a project forward. You'll learn how to respond to criticism, to being diminished, or anything that may occur that your natural response would be to just sit down and shut up. And in the most serious of circumstances, these tools can be used if you ever encounter your own version of a Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby. So it's a simple technique with very powerful and broad applications.
So when will this workshop be and where will it be held?
So this workshop is being held at the SheHive, which is here in Ferndale, Michigan. It's being held on Wednesday, February 27th from 6:30 to 9 p.m., and tickets for the Verbal Self-Defense for Women workshop are available on Eventbrite.
And how much are those tickets going to be?
So they range in price from, I believe, $65 to $75. The sooner that you purchase a ticket, the lower the price.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And where can people find you online?
People can find me online. My website is laurak.co. They can also find me on Instagram at Force of Badassery or on Facebook by typing in my name, Laura Khalil. That's Khalil.
Well, thank you so much for joining me over here at Daily Detroit, Laura. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again.
Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it, Shianne.
Absolutely. I will see you at that workshop.
Before I let you go, tomorrow we'll be at the Rattlesnake Club doing a special Friday show, talking food and Detroit Restaurant Week, and of course, more stories around Detroit. As always, thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, tell a friend. Word of mouth, after all, is the best way to spread Daily Detroit. For Sven, Shianne, and Randy, I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.